Going to New York. Joining New York next. Thank you. So we're reading a book called the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is a 18,000 verse history of the universe. Srimad Bhagavatam. It says in Srimad Bhagavatam, these verses, Krishna is Radha, This means that this brilliant, shining Purana history has arisen just after the departure of Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by knowledge, religion, etc. People who've lost their vision due to the dense darkness of the ignorance of days of Kali will get light from this shining Purana. So, yes, in this age, things are very dark and so much confusion about the meaning of life. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, this book, explains, clarifies what this world is, and it actually talks about the history of the whole universe, in fact. So it's very important. This particular chapter is describing the birth of one of the great emperors of this world, because the world previously was run by monarchs. And so we're hearing about the history so that we can understand how great people were in the past and what is the difference between the present population. People nowadays, there's no qualified kings or emperors. The last emperor was, maybe you can sit over here so that you can see. Just sit over here. Not you. Oh. Him. No, not you. Him. Or you can sit over that. So you can see over there, because you can look down. There you go. So these great personalities of the past, we don't have people like this. The last empress of the world was Queen Victoria, but she became powerful. I think she was quite a God-conscious lady in her own way. But basically, she became empress because the British, they ransacked the world, and of course stole the wealth of India, etc. Wasn't the best way to become the empress. Anyway, so this is important to know the history of the world, because the world, we can learn so many lessons from the history of the world. So before we start, we chant the invocation for the Srimad Bhagavatam. Please repeat, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So then we're studying this chapter. It's Canto 1, there's 12 cantos, chapter 12, text number 23 and 24. This chapter is called The Birth of Emperor Parikshit. So Parikshit was a great emperor. He died young because he was cursed by a degraded Brahmin. The Brahmins became degraded. Originally, society was divided into four orders orders of life. The intellectual class, they were called the Brahmins. They were the brains of society. Then the Kshatriyas, they were warriors. They were kings. They protected the innocent and the old people and the cows and the women, etc. And then there were the Vaishyas, the business people and the farmers. They they earn money and they give generous donations to the temple, and they grow the food, they protect the cows. And then the Sudras, or the laborers, so they do the manual work. So everybody is in one of these four categories. Even in the modern society, we have intellectuals, professors, scientists, I guess you could say, those are intellectuals. Then we have soldiers, policemen, protect the innocent, supposedly. And then we have the business people. There's not too many farmers, it's too much hard work. Nobody farms. It's all done by machinery. And it's very sad because in India, 300,000 farmers have killed themselves because of the modern industrialization of farming. It's put a lot of farmers out of work, and all the chemicals. So a lot of them swallow insecticide, all that. It's very sad. And then, naturally some people, they're more suited for laboring types of work. We have so many laborers, you need laborers. Of course now so many things are done by machine, so we have a lot of people out of work, collecting the dole money. But anyway, in the ideal society, everybody fits into one of these different categories, and society should be organized so that everybody is peacefully engaged in an activity that is suited to their nature. So we found that in the Vietnam War, for instance, with conscription, the American government, they drafted people into the military, and of course they weren't really suited for fighting, so they ended up becoming heroin addicts and smoking ganja. That's what they did. And so, people have to be engaged in what their natural tendencies are. So when they're young, in the ideal society, the teachers and the parents, they could see very clearly what kind of propensities or what kind of inclination these people have. So they will be kind of put into activities that were suitable for them, and they would feel satisfied. Because if you're doing some activity that you're not suited for, it's very depressing and very not good for your consciousness. So therefore, society should be divided into these four classes. And then there's four other categories, the different ashrams. An ashram is a place where people can make spiritual progress. In the present day and age, nobody lives in a situation where they make spiritual progress. We're all living in a society which is upside down, and there's no real spirituality. So people are very lost and bewildered and confused. And we know that the biggest disease of the 21st century is anxiety and depression. So anyway, so people, they need to learn some spirituality to give them a solid foundation for life. Otherwise life, really, what's the meaning of life? We're just here, we just have a body, we're supposed to enjoy our body, but how much can you enjoy your body before you get old and get diseases and die? So society is trying to train people so that they can understand the real value of the human form of life, which is really meant for trying to purify your consciousness so that you can eventually relinquish your attachment for the material world. because we all have this physical body because we want to enjoy our body. So the body will only be enjoyable for a short while. So, learn some spiritual values. So there's 4 ashrams in the beginning. People would be trained up to, lead a simple life, get up early in the morning. The children will be trained to be celibate, believe it or not. Hard to believe in this modern day and age. Celibacy is very important. And then they were trained to be very clean and have some understanding of Krishna, God, and how to make spiritual progress. So spirituality is an ongoing endeavor that we are trying to achieve perfection. We're all potentially perfect because God is perfect. So He's created so many souls, and His idea in creating all these souls is actually for them to be happy. That's why He created them. So He wants to give as many people as possible happiness. So He created unlimited souls. There's unlimited souls. You couldn't possibly count all the souls in London, for instance. You might count how many human beings there are, but you've got to count all the rats and all the mice and all the squirrels and everything has a soul. It's all inconceivable. Just like, we can't really understand God because He's so great. So it's like an ant trying to understand a computer. Obviously, it's on a different level. So we are like that. We're very insignificant. God is very great. So any society should be divided into these categories so that everybody can benefit. And that's how India was at one time controlled the whole world, because we don't really know the true history of the world. But this Emperor Parikshit, he was the emperor of the whole world. And so it's describing his qualities before he took birth, that he would be such a great personality that he would have certain characteristics which are required of a great leader. Because leaders are generally born, they're not educated. They might be educated, but they're already in their blood to be leaders. So in this day and age, we don't have leaders that are born to be leaders. So therefore we have democracy, and that's been called demon crazy, just like in America. Lots of demons are voting for another demon. He's a criminal. Anyway, everyone's a criminal in this day and age. But democracy, so ideally, even in democracy, if there was a shining example of a intelligent person who knew how to act for the benefit of everybody else, and the people were educated in, discriminating between what is in their own real self-interest and what is opposed to that, which is what the leaders promise is just simply economic development and sense gratification. They're just promising you'll get more money and you'll be wealthier, etc., etc. They're not promising, that we will help you free yourself from the problems of material life, so that at the end of this life, you won't have to take birth again, that you can actually go back to the spiritual world. And so that should be the education. In all the schools and colleges, that should be the goal. But we don't see that. The goal is get a good job, make money, and get a nice house and a nice car, and then you'll die, and what will happen then? They have no idea. So the education is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in this book. It describes life in the womb, what it's like to be stuck in a womb again, confined to a very small space, and then to be propelled out into, a world where you're covered in all kinds of membranes and blood and all that, and then you have to go back to school again to learn your ABCs and go through your teenage years again, being confused. So anyway, we're trying to educate people. Hopefully the Krishna consciousness movement will become much bigger and will be able to influence the leaders of society. Because we have many prominent people in the society. The small gentleman who was here this morning, he's a billionaire. You probably wouldn't have noticed, but he's saying at the end, he's a billionaire. He comes here every day. There's another billionaire that comes every day, but he didn't come today. Very wealthy people. So anyway, we'll read these verses here. This is, which one? Okay, so we say the Sanskrit, and you can repeat after me. Pitamaha samasamye. It's up on the board up here. Prasade girishopama. Ashraya sarvabhutanam. Yatadevo ramashraya. Pitamaha samasaraye. Pitamaha samasamye. Sade girishopama. Ashraya sarvabhutanam. Yatadevo ramashraya.
Ashraya sarvabhutanam. Yata devo ramashraya. Pitamaha samasamye. Sade girishopamaha. Ashraya sarvabhutanam. Yata devo ramashraya. Pitamaha samasamye. Sade girishopama. Ashraya sarvabhutanam. Yata devo ramashraya.
Pitamaha samasamye. Prasade girishopama. Ashraya sarvabhutanam. Yata devo ramashraya.
Pitamaha, the grandfather, or Brahma, Sama, equally good, Samye, in the matter, Sade, in charity or in munificence. Lord Shiva.
Lord Shiva.
Upama.
Upama.
Comparison of equilibrium.
Comparison of equilibrium.
Ashraya.
Ashraya.
Resort.
Resort.
Sava.
Sama.
All.
All.
Bhutanam.
Bhutanam.
Of the living beings.
Of the living beings.
Yatha.
Yatha.
As. Deva.
Deva.
The Supreme Lord.
Supreme Lord.
Brahma Ashraya.
Brahma Ashraya.
Personality of Godhead.
Personality of Godhead.
Translation. This child will be like his grandfather Yudhisthira or Brahma in equanimity of mind. He will be magnificent like the Lord of the Kailash hill Shiva, and he will be the resort of everyone like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, who is even the shelter of the Goddess of Fortune. Please repeat. This child will be like his grandfather.
This child will be like his grandfather.
Yudhisthira.
Yudhisthira.
Or Brahma.
Brahma.
In equanimity of mind.
Equanimity of mind.
He will be munificent.
He will be magnificent.
Like the Lord of the Kailash hill.
Like the Lord of the Kailash
Shiva.
Shiva.
And he will be the resort of everyone.
And he will be the resort of everyone.
Like the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan.
Like the Supreme Personality of
Who
Narayan.
is even the shelter of the Goddess of Fortune.
He is even the shelter of the Goddess of Fortune.
Okay, the commentary by Srila Prabhupada, the founder of Hare Krishna movement. Mental equanimity refers both to Maharaj Yudhisthira and to Brahma, the grandfather of all living beings. According to Sridhar Swami, the grandfather referred to here is Brahma, but according to Vishwanath Chakravarti, the grandfather is Maharaj Yudhisthira himself. But in both cases, the comparison is equally good because both of them are recognized representatives of the Supreme Lord, and thus both of them have to maintain mental equanimity, being engaged in welfare work for the living being. Any responsible executive agent at the top of administration has to tolerate different types of onslaught from the very persons for whom he works. Brahmaji was criticized even by the gopis, the highest perfectional devotees of the Lord. The gopis were dissatisfied with the work of Brahmaji because Lord Brahma, as creator of this particular universe, created eyelids which obstructed their seeing Lord Krishna. They could not tolerate a moment's blinking of the eyes, for it kept them from seeing their beloved Lord Krishna. So what to speak of others who are naturally very critical of every action of a responsible man? Similarly, Maharaj Yudhisthira had to cross over many difficult situations created by his enemies, and he proved to be the most perfect maintainer of mental equanimity in all circumstances. Therefore, the example of both grandfathers for maintaining equanimity of mind is quite fitting. Lord Shiva is a celebrated demigod who awards gifts to beggars. His name is therefore Ashutosha, one who is pleased very easily. He is also called the Bhutanath, or the Lord of the common folk, who are mainly attached to him because of his munificent gifts, even without consideration of the after effects. Ravana was very attached to Lord Shiva. By easily pleasing him, Ravana became so powerful that he wanted to challenge the authority of Lord Ram. Of course, Ravana was never helped by Lord Shiva when he fought with Ram, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the father of Lord Shiva. To Brikasura, Lord Shiva awarded a benediction which was not only awkward but also disturbing. Brikasura became empowered by the grace of the Lord to banish anyone's head simply by touching it. Although this was awarded by Lord Shiva, the cunning fellow wanted to make an experiment of the power by touching the head of Lord Shiva. Thus the Lord had to take shelter of Vishnu to save himself from trouble. And the Lord Vishnu, by his illusory potency, asked Brikasura to make an experiment with his own head. The fellow did it and was finished himself, and so the world was saved from all sorts of trouble by such a cunning beggar of the demigods. The excellent point is that Lord Shiva never denies anyone any sort of gift. He is therefore the most glorious, although sometimes some kind of mistake is made. Rama means the goddess of fortune, and her shelter is Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu is the maintainer of all living beings. There are innumerable living beings, not only on the surface of this planet, but also in other hundreds of thousands of planets. All of them are provided with all necessities of life for the progressive march towards the end of self-realization. But on the path of sense gratification, they are put into difficulties by the agent of Maya, the illusory energy, and so travel the path of a fool's plan of economic development. Such economic development is never successful because it is illusory. These men are always after the mercy of the illusory goddess of fortune, but they do not know that the goddess of fortune can live only under the protection of Vishnu. Without Vishnu, the goddess of fortune is an illusion. We should therefore seek the protection of Vishnu instead of directly seeking the protection of the goddess of fortune. Only Vishnu and the devotees of Vishnu can give protection to all. And because Maharaj Parikshit was himself protected by Vishnu, it was quite possible for him to give complete protection to all who wanted to live under his rule. Oh my God, tremendous, yeah. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master forced open my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto his feet. So here is describing this great king, Parikshit, what he would be like. And it's compared to some of the great personalities that people in the modern world are not aware of. But who knows? They can't say they don't exist because they haven't been in the universe. But if we want perfect knowledge, we have to get it from people who are not ordinary people like we have in the modern world. People speculate about the existence of God, or they write books denying the existence of God, or they speculate about the cause of the creation. But we are not speculating, we are taking knowledge from ancient scriptures, and we're finding that by following the advice of these ancient books, we're actually becoming happy. So I think, if a materialistic person or somebody doubts what I'm saying, they can ask anyone here whether they would actually like to go back to their life they had before. Were they happy before they took up Krishna consciousness? So I think, I know that none of them would want to go back to material life. We have a young devotee here. He was very well situated, working for who did you work for? Huh? Which bank? Goldman Sachs. He worked for Goldman Sachs. He had a bright future. He could have made lots of money, got lots of bonuses, but he gave it. So would you like to go back to that? So there was also one devotee, his name was Giriraj. He's an American, Jewish actually. We have a lot of Jews in the movement. But Giriraj, he came from a very wealthy family in Chicago. His father was like the top lawyer in Chicago, a multi-millionaire. And so he became a devotee. He was sleeping on the floor. He was going out collecting funds to build our temple in Mumbai. And his father actually came to see Srila Prabhupada, the founder, his guru, in Mumbai. And his father offered him $1 million if he gave up Krishna consciousness, but he wasn't interested. So and I have another friend, actually, Henry Ford's great-grandson. His name is Ambarish. He's initiated by Srila Prabhupada. I know him quite well. He lives where I live in Florida. He's a nice person, a very humble person. So he's also building this big temple in India, in Mayapur, spending like $50 million or whatever. It's quite a lot of money. But he didn't give up all his money to become a devotee, but he uses his money in Krishna service. And he was telling me about his family, who were all very wealthy, because Henry Ford, obviously famous wealthy person, actually believed in reincarnation, Henry Ford. But this friend of mine, Alfred Ford, who is his great-grandson, he said that his family were all alcoholics. And he himself, he had a bit of a problem with that. Don't tell him I said so. But he wouldn't go back to material life, because material life is full of problems. So we are trying to make spiritual advancement. We're not trying to improve our situation materially. We're trying to achieve perfection. And so this is what is most satisfying, that when we are on the path of Bhakti Yoga, we automatically feel satisfied. So Krishna says, in the Bhagavad Gita, which is our basic book, he says, Raja Vijay Rajaguya Harikamatamam Protection Ragamandamyam Susukam Gatamadam. We don't make anything up. We simply repeat what the books say, because we have faith in the people who wrote the books, because we would say that if you examine their character, if their character had no flaws, like we had, the example of the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, Srila Prabhupada. So there's been about 20 biographies written about his life, and nobody found any flaw. Everybody was glorifying him, that they had saved them from material life, and they felt very grateful, and they couldn't find a flaw in him. So there are ideal people, and those people, they don't want to cheat others, they simply want to help them. So Srila Prabhupada, he went through some struggles to bring this knowledge to the West, because Western people hitherto have been deprived of real knowledge. So they have no idea about the creation. They speculate there was a big bang. So if there's a big bang, why is everything so well organized? Why does the sun come up every day at the same time? Why do the seasons come on time every year? The moon comes, full moon every, whatever it is. And then the tides come in and out exactly when they're predicted to come in and out. So this is order. There's order in the universe. It's not an accident. But they speculate because they don't want to admit the existence of a higher power. Because they've seen so much false religion. There's fanatical people in all religions who say that theirs is the only true religion, and if you don't follow their religion, then you go to hell forever. So people don't believe that, and it's not true. So therefore, we trust the words written in these books, that by own experience, we've experienced material life. We weren't born as Hare Krishna people. We took it up, and we've experienced that it's actually much more satisfying than material life. So here, in this verse, it's talking about some powerful demigods, because there are demigods, according to the Vedas, which we wouldn't know without reading the Vedas, but most of you probably heard of Shiva, even if you... So Shiva is one of the great demigods. So he is... he's in charge of the destruction of this universe. The universe is scheduled to exist for, this particular age is 432,000 years, the Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. So there's 4 ages. The total of 4 ages is 4,320,000 years, I believe. And then there's the Silver Age, and then the Bronze Age, and so the Kali Yuga, this age, everything becomes more degraded. Even in my own life, I've seen more degradation, more crazy kind of sense gratification, more outrageous behavior, like people who are hell-bent on enjoying their physical body. So it's degrading, but there is one advantage of this age, which is described in these books, that in this age, God has appeared in a very merciful form to give a very simple process of self-realization, and that is the singing and the dancing. So, singing and dancing is very easy. Everybody, when people are happy, they sing and they dance. So, Lord Chaitanya, the incarnation of the Lord, he's given this simple process that even though he was God himself, and he had followers who wrote the most philosophical, complete analysis of the material world and who described the spiritual world as well, the Goswamis of Vrindavan, that he himself, although he was God himself, he was the greatest scholar, he defeated all other great scholars in India, but he said that the chanting of the holy name is the only way to achieve perfection in this day and age. So that's what we do, as our movement is based on the chanting. That we're going out every day on the street chanting Hare Krishna, we're chanting Hare Krishna here. But behind it all is a very deep philosophy. And the basic philosophy is Achinta Veda Veda Tattva, which in Sanskrit, the English meaning is that we are, as living beings, will simultaneously one and different from the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is Satchidananda. He's described Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadya Adigovna Savakarna Karma. This means that Lord Brahma is also mentioned here. He acknowledges Krishna. He is the supreme controller. Satchidananda has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He's the cause of all causes. There is no other cause but him. So we also have Satchidananda, eternal, full of knowledge, full of happiness. But because of our desire to try and be happy independently of Krishna, he's put us into this material world of birth and death. So here we are. We have different choices we can make, but we should know that having a human body is a great gift, because most living entities do not have human bodies, therefore they can't think about life. They're simply forced to act according to their body dictates to them. Like if you're a lion, you have to eat meat, but if you're a human being, you can make a choice. I don't need to eat meat. It's not good for me. It's causes suffering to other living beings. It's bad for the planet because it causes global warming. It doesn't taste as good, it's more expensive. So therefore, human life is actually the highest life. And we have an opportunity to perfect our life. We can act actually as human beings. The duty of the human being is to know themselves. So it's said that one isn't considered to be a human being unless they inquire, who am I, why am I here, why do I exist, is there a God, etc. So this is human life. So provided we actually act as human beings, then we can easily make progress on the spiritual path. By hearing these narrations, by hearing about great personalities like Lord Shiva. The Lord Shiva is famous because he drank the poison. So in the history of the universe, there was a great battle between the demigods and the demons. Because even on the higher planets, there are demigods and demons. Just like here, we get a perverted reflection of the demigods, or the good and the bad, because everybody's bad, really. So we got Putin and we got, the Russians and the Americans, because they're all bad, but some are worse than others. So, similarly, not in the spiritual world, but in this physical world, on the higher planets, the heavenly planets, and there are battles going on between the deities and the demigods. So there was a battle, and this is recorded in this ancient history of the battle, and they were fighting for the nectar of immortality. So, believe it or not, they churned the ocean, and the first thing that came out was poison. So the poison was a great quantity of it, so it threatened the universe. So Lord Shiva, he drank the poison. So therefore, everyone was very grateful to him, and they composed a prayer. They said, he said, Tapyante Likatavina, Tapina Paramaradhanandati Purushasya Kilatmana, means that great personalities invariably undergo great suffering for the benefit of others. Such suffering is considered to be the highest method of worship of the Lord. So we see that Christ, for instance, he went through great suffering, but he did it because by doing that, he actually glorified God. Because anybody who has the kind of forgiveness that Christ had, to tolerate pain, but at the same time, oh Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. This is a great personality. So we have many such personalities in our history, and like this king who's in the womb, when he came out of the womb, he was the emperor of the world for some time. And then he made a mistake because he was hunting in the forest, and he became very thirsty. The kings were allowed to hunt to perfect their archery because they had to protect the innocent so they could practice their archery. So he was hunting and became thirsty, so he went to the hermitage of a sage. And that sage, he wanted to drink water. He said, "Can I drink water?" The sage just ignored him. So he got a dead snake, the king, and he put it around his neck. And the sage's son, he was so upset that he cursed him to die within 7 days. So at that time, 5,000 years ago, the Brahmins, they were very powerful. They lost their power. They became corrupt. We've heard of the caste system is corrupt. You're not born a Brahmin. You can only become a Brahmin by developing the qualities of a Brahmin, which are forgiveness, truthfulness, knowledge, cleanliness, purity, etc. So he cursed the king to die within 7 days. So we'll hear how the king, he had 7 days left to live. So he sat down on the bank of the river Ganges and he listened to the narration of the history of the universe, which actually culminates in the appearance of Krishna. Krishna appeared in this world to benedict the people of this planet. He spoke the Bhagavad Gita. So Parikshit Maharaj, he was hearing instructions from his guru, Sukadeva Goswami. And while he was on the throne, he knew he was going to die. For 7 days he didn't drink any water or eat anything whatsoever. He just listened very attentively. But he said that his only desire, he said, "I don't care if the snake bird bites me. I'm not afraid of death. Whatever happens, it's all the arrangement of the Lord. So whatever happens, I don't care. The only thing I care about is that you all people gathered here because many great personalities came to hear the recitation of his book while he was dying. The only thing I care about is that you continue to glorify the Lord, because that is what he knew is what people need. They need to hear about Krishna, because when you hear about Krishna, you understand that Krishna is not only the most beautiful. Here we heard the commentary in purport here how the Gopas, they cursed Brahma because he gave them the ability to blink. And they were upset because they wanted to see Krishna, and the blinking obscured their vision for a moment. Anyway, it sounds crazy, but it was Krishna is so beautiful that the blinking was disturbing. No, the only thing he cared about was that everybody continued to glorify Krishna, because that is what the world needs. That's what makes people happy. So in the modern world, who we glorify? We glorify some movie actors, some singers, some politicians, some people who, I mean, I'm not criticizing them all, but, you know, are they really saintly people? Are they really forgiving and kind and truthful and merciful and unmaterialistic? Do they really care about other people? Probably not. Although I read about this one pop star, I was quite surprised. Taylor Swift. I thought about her. Anyway, she's big time. She made like $3 billion in her last tour. But she made so much money that she gave every one of her roadies, the people that organized all the stage equipment and all that stuff, she gave them all $100,000 returns. I'm not glorifying her, but at least she has generosity. Something. Because generosity is a sign of the mode of goodness. Stingy people, they're in the mode of ignorance, the mode of passion. Everybody's in some mode. Passion, goodness, ignorance. So it's good to be generous. Anyway, the most generous thing is to give people knowledge. That is the greatest gift. Because by getting knowledge, people can free themselves once and for all from the repetition of birth and death. Anyway, we'll stop here. It's time for breakfast. So please stay for breakfast. We have the best breakfast in England. And it's free. Do you have any questions or anything? You can feel free to ask any questions you like. Yeah, you always have a question.
I just read some news that India landed on the moon. I assume the rocket landed on the moon. Did it really happen?
How would I know? I'm not on the moon. I couldn't tell you if they came. But what's the benefit? I saw the pictures of the surface of the moon. It looked like dust. It didn't look very exciting. It wasn't as good as Florida. You don't have nice palm trees there or nice coastline and beaches like Florida. It's actually, we don't believe, in all honesty, that they landed on the moon. But because the moon is very far away. But even if they landed on the moon, what is the benefit? I mean, why don't they try to clean up India before they talk about going? Are they going to go and trash India? Yeah, if you go to India, there's all plastic bags everywhere. It's a mess. So before, trying to make a mess of somewhere else, clean up your own backyard. But I don't know if we went to the moon.
In the bank time, that said, basically, he made the calculation. He said it would take 7 months for them to get to the moon.
Yeah.
Not 4 days. So they said they got there in 4 days, but according to Bank of Times calculation, it's 7 months.
But not everybody believes the Bible thumb. We do.
Well, I do.
That's good. They're very intelligent. Maybe they went to some other planet, because the moon is considered to be a heavenly planet. It's, you can't just go, like, if you want to go to America, it's hard to get a visa, or it's hard to get permanent residence there. Not everybody can get in. They've got millions of people lining up at the border, all kinds of South American people trying to get into America. They can't get in. They won't let Indians in generally either, because they don't trust Indians. Indians can be quite sneaky. You see, Indians are very smart. That's why Indians find it easier to make money in the West. Because in India, everybody's very smart. It's easy, it's hard to make money there because everybody's very on their tiptoes, Over here, Western people, they're not as sharp, it's easy to make money. Okay? So Indian people, they, in America, they're 2% of the population, but they pay 6% of the taxes. So Indians are valuable, and we see that, Indians are intelligent. We had a boy out here, some of you have heard this already, but this boy he was only like 9 years of age. He knew the whole Bhagavad Gita. Every verse in the Bhagavad Gita, he could recite it in Sanskrit. It's pretty amazing. 700 verses. You would just, say which chapter, which verse, immediately. He was a clever boy. But he liked Lionel Messi. He liked football too. Okay. Anybody guess have a question? You have a question? No. Okay. All right, yes. Right. Oh, okay. I see. He wants you to say something.
I see.
Anyway, okay, we'll finish it. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Guys, I gotta do it.
Yeah.
I've been there before actually. Yeah, I have you downstairs. Yeah. It's good.
These are deities. So, Krishna God, he makes himself available in this world in the form of a deity. So, deity is a manifestation of God. So the deity is made, these ones are made of marble, it could be made of, bronze or silver or whatever. These are made of marble. The idea is that by having many deities in the world, many deities in this world, so it looks like it's God. So you can offer flowers, you can offer incense,
You got class yesterday.
in the form of deity, except worship. So in India you'll find